Auntie Diana, I know you're up there listening, and I am so sorry that your firstborn grew up to be a clown. I am so sorry, Auntie, you tried your best, but the thirst for the crown and power has gotten to this boy, and I know it's the reason why you put your arm through heaven's clouds, reached down to earth, and snatched back William's hairline along with your fine Spencer jeans. And I don't blame you, Auntie, because if he's going to act like a Windsor, he should look like one. By now, you've probably heard that William has been yapping his colonizing mouth about Africa and population growth. The last time he said it publicly was when Kate was pregnant with their third child. So he can pop out all the kids he wants, but there's just way too many blacks for the future king's liking. There is a strained eugenicist attitude with many in elite circles towards population. In fact, Prince Philip once said that when he dies, that he'd like to come back as a virus. Stanley Johnson, who is Boris Johnson's father, has written numerous books on the topic of world population and viruses, and yet him and his idiotic son have had numerous illegitimate children. You wonder, if they're so worried about overpopulation, why don't they start with themselves? Like, you first. Because no one guzzles carbon like y'all rich folk. Why don't you get your balls snipped and stop knocking up mistresses? We don't need any more of these elitists on the planet, and we don't need them deciding what we do with our lives. The whole overpopulation argument is quite flawed and doesn't take into account many things, like the fact that what appears to be overpopulation is partly due to a concentration of people in metropolitan areas in order to find work, jobs and education, and the range of sustainable and ethical options to population growth are rarely discussed. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to, especially over the last 2 years when people have really started to evaluate their lives, who have said to me that they'd love to have a homestead or a small farm or a cabin house or a tiny home or a more traditional setup of life. Even just trying to find a small allotment to grow vegetables in cities like London is becoming more and more difficult, because what are they doing? They're shutting the allotments down. They're taking away people's ability to be more self-sustaining. And now, in an age of remote working, it should be a very easy step forward, and yet all of these options are becoming more and more expensive, while so-called eco-solutions are equally expensive, and the elites seem to be benefiting the most from this eco-revolution. I spoke in another video about the Queen owning sea land where they're going to put wind farms. It hasn't been lost on many also the numerous horrors that people of colour, particularly on the African continent, have been subjected to because of this colonial thinking, and that includes forced sterilizations and contraception of African women by Western entities and ideas. So when the future King of England starts talking about overpopulation in Africa, you can imagine why some people get nervous as well as angry. And if you want to talk about the destruction of wildlife, well, you can go tell all of the Western poachers to stay away then. When Obama was in office, he actually banned Americans from bringing hunting trophies back to the US. When Trump came into office, he reversed that ban. So where was William when that happened? I didn't hear him say anything then. The blue ticks came after him on Twitter, and it was glorious. Kate and William are going to be a disaster for the monarchy, an absolute disaster. They seem to be jumping from one disaster to another, and I can bet the palace staff are glossing over all of this, and they're living in a bubble and think they're doing great. If this isn't a sign for the Commonwealth, I don't know what is. And I can bet you that he will offer no apology and say something just as stupid next week or next month. So on to my review of The Princes and the Press. So let me just say right off the back that I didn't really like this documentary. To me, at this point, any documentary that involves Meghan and Harry that doesn't highlight the coordinated smear campaign by the firm and the press to destroy Meghan in all of its entirety, all of the details, it's just a waste of time. And while the documentary does allude to some level of collaboration between the royals and the press, it attempts to make it look like there is some kind of gentleman's agreement with a few tit for tats here and there, as opposed to the controlling and toxic relationship it is, and how much of the smear campaign was ordered from the top, to the point where you even had politicians, the likes of Pt1, boldly lying and saying that there was not a coordinated campaign. Of course there was, and it came from within the palace and from the highest levels of the British Rupert Murdoch press. So the documentary itself was filmed before the Oprah interview. What's interesting is that even after the Oprah interview aired and Harry made it clear that there was a toxic relationship and invisible contract between the press and the royals, most of the royal rodents still continued to play dumb and still continued to abuse Harry and Meghan, despite having filmed this documentary. Dan Wootton himself literally said in a radio show that the leaks were coming from within the royal family, and it's well known that Wooten and Jason the Rat Knuff went to the same school together. There was no mention of this. I honestly just feel like the squad need to be given the opportunity to do our own documentary where we get to interview these royal rodents, because we would rip them to shreds. We've been keeping the receipts from day one. So how is it that somebody who was commissioned by a big broadcaster network isn't asking the right questions? Until I see the second part of this documentary, I'm just going to assume that this is really just being overhyped and there's really nothing to fuss about, because there was nothing that was mentioned that was particularly new that people in the Sussex squad anyway don't know. Maybe some people in the general public will find this to be new information, but even then, there's nothing particularly groundbreaking. It could all just be one very big bait and switch. Several royal rodents were featured, including, yes, Dan Wootton, Camilla the Liar Tominey, Roya Nika, Rihanna Mills, and Boris Johnson's sister, who, yeah, I'm gonna get to this Karen in a moment. But just on the royal rodents in general, what annoyed me most about this documentary is the way that they were allowed to explain their vile behaviour away as some kind of misunderstanding. Rachel Johnson out here claiming that she'd never write an article calling Meghan's DNA exotic now because she's been educated, everyone. She's been educated that the article was 4 years ago. And apparently, according to her, that's a very big difference in time. And so while she may have been very ignorant 4 years ago, she's not ignorant now. I'd love to know what other opinions she had 4 years ago. These British reporters are very good at presenting Kate as this saintly figure, the perfect image of white British femininity, and yet they claim to have no understanding of the demeaning language they use to other people of colour. How is that? You seem to know the language and imagery that elevates one person, so why isn't that same language used for women of colour? Why wasn't that language used for Meghan? It's the politics of othering, and they're very good at it. And they're also very good at acting like they're oblivious to their prejudice. I'd love to see Sarah Vine interviewed for this documentary, and I'd love to see her explain away this famous headline. The only bit that surprised me about the documentary was that Jenny Afia, who is Meghan's lawyer, made a small appearance. Now, she doesn't really say much in this first episode other than denying a claim that was made about Meghan. It looks like she's going to say a little bit more in the next episode, but it may explain why William was very nervous. And I do believe really that it was William who really pushed for Kensington Palace, Clarence House and Buckingham Palace to release a joint triple house statement, not to mention all of the press hoo-ha leading up to the documentary airing. The statement criticised the BBC documentary and its contents as overblown with unfounded claims. Please tell me where this energy was when the whole world was made to think that Meghan made Kate cry. Where was this energy for the last 4 years when Meghan was being slandered day after day after day. Now you want to be talking about how we shouldn't listen to overblown and unfounded claims. And now, because of this, Kate and William have decided that BBC cannot air their Christmas Carol concert or whatever it is that they were going to do. Apparently now it's going to be shown on ITV, which incidentally is the same network that the Oprah interview aired on. And I guess in an attempt to make sure that the documentary didn't look biased, Samantha Markle also featured, and an independent detective who admitted to obtaining information illegally about Meghan and her family. Guys and dolls, I've said this in a previous podcast. We haven't even begun to see just how much drama is coming. Something big and something major is coming. And let's not forget, Harry's book is coming out next year. So put your seatbelts on, grab your popcorn, and hold on tight because we are in for a ride. And I believe that Harry and Meghan are going to come out of this the winners, and the other royals, for their greed, for their hatred and abuse, are going to come out of this the losers. I will watch part 2 of the documentary and let you know what I think, but I honestly feel that there's nothing that is really going to be said that is going to be groundbreaking. I'm sure they're making some edits, so we'll just wait and see. That's all for now, my lovelies. Let me know what you think of all of that. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.